All right, there we go. Hello everyone, how's it going? Team here, and this is BxJS Weekly, episode 118, bringing you all the best JavaScript news of the week in a podcast form. And today we got probably one of the smallest episodes ever. I'm not sure what is happening, but this week's there's literally no news. We got some libs and demos, some interesting things happening with Deno, a bunch of nice releases, but just two articles, like literally two, one in getting started section and one in like articles and news. So this is probably gonna be relatively short. But before we get started, I wanted to tell that basically I am on a furlough right now. I have a lot more free time than I expected to, until August at least. So what I'm gonna be doing is, starting Monday, I'm gonna be doing daily live streams where I would rewrite exoframe to TypeScript while learning TypeScript. Those are not going to be my typical live streams where I do, the educational content, because I don't know TypeScript myself. But if you are curious to see how I usually work, and if you're curious to see me suffer learning TypeScript, then do come around. I'm basically going to be doing it daily around, I guess, 3 p.m. Berlin time or so. And Wednesday still is going to be the day for the BxJS live stream with whatever the topic you pick, guys. So it's all staying the same. But yes, if you are curious to see me code, then do come around. There's going to be a lot more of those, at least until August. Anyway, going back to the podcast, we got the getting started section, and the only article we got here is under the hood of test runners, specifically Mocha. So this article talks, well, they say, for example, Mocha, but really just talks about how Mocha works under the hood. And it's a really good write-up of how the test runner is built, basically, and what does it actually do when you run Mocha test, right? So if you are curious as to how the test runner works, I think we've had quite a few of those lately. So nonetheless, this is a really good write-up. And if you're just getting into the test runners, do check this one out. It will clear up quite a few things, and it's a very well-written article that dissects basically how Mocha works pretty damn nicely. So quite highly recommended. Pegu, I just created a project to learn TypeScript. Well, that's my intention as well. So I want to learn TypeScript, or I want to try out the TypeScript on a bigger project, and not, starting from scratch without knowing anything, but actually the project that I know, basically I know the feature set, I know how it should work. So we're going to see how that goes. Hey Ashok, welcome to the stream. I've been watching your videos for a long time. Thanks for all the videos. Well, you're welcome. They're really cool to hear that you learned something from them. So, yeah. Okay, anyway, the second and last article for today we got here, unfortunately, is optimizing keyboard navigation using tabindex and ARIA properties. So this is a deep dive into optimizing, as it says, the keyboard navigation within the websites. So if you are working with a website that has to be accessible, or you care about your users who use keyboard navigation, which is, I don't actually think that many websites do this. So unless you're a really big website like Forbes or New York Times or whatever, I don't think I usually see the keyboard navigation working at all most of the time. So this is a really cool article, really great write-up on how the tab index and ARIA hidden work, and how to actually use them to allow user to focus on the content that matters, not just every other link and word that, doesn't really have to be focusable, basically. So if you're working with a website that has to be accessible, then do check this article out. It is a pretty amazing guideline and a really good write-up on how all of that works. Hey Marina, welcome to the stream. Hi Luigi, welcome. Okay, that's actually it for the news. Like 2 articles, and yeah, but we got 2 things and tips, tricks, and bit-sized awesomeness to discuss. First one of them is this announcement or design document from Deno team that actually is discussing. So the Deno team currently discusses dropping TypeScript for internals of the Deno. So Deno would still support TypeScript out of the box. You will still be able to use it as end user, right? But the internals of Deno would be rewritten from JavaScript the other way around, from TypeScript into JavaScript. And there is basically, this design document includes all the reasoning they have. The major pain point, it seems, being First of all, the speed, the TypeScript basically takes minutes to compile the whole Deno core into the final code that you can actually use. And second of all, there's some problems with typings. It seems like they generate the typings manually, which means that in some cases they would have issues with shadowing class names and so on and so forth. And they had problems making TSC generate the DTS files for them for some reason. Again, this is like, seems like a very interesting case for the TypeScript team. So if I would be on a TypeScript team, I would personally just jump into that and try to figure out what is wrong and how can I fix this, from the TypeScript perspective. But we're going to see where that leads. So there's a pretty long discussion here at the bottom of the design document between the RAI and other team members, which is also quite interesting. And it seems like even if they pick to transition from TypeScript into JavaScript, it's not going to be like overnight immediate thing. There's a bunch of pull requests already, but it's probably going to take quite some time to finish. Nonetheless, it's a pretty interesting, like it's very interesting to see, TypeScript being picked as a starting point and then rejected because of some, how would I put this? I mean, I wouldn't call them, I guess it's problems, right? So still problems, is just limitations of TypeScript, I guess is a better word. But yeah, so if you're curious as to why Deno is planning to switch, do check out the document. And I also would recommend checking out the discussion here in Brian's Twitter, because there's some, like, quite a bit of, pretty smart people in the comments, like Matteo Colina, who is one of the authors of the Fastify, Michael Jackson, Michael Rogers, Devon Gavet, who is working on Next.js, and like a bunch of other people who work on amazing things. And a lot of them asking very interesting questions and discussing very interesting things here. So do check it out, absolutely. Let me have a look at the chat. Hey team, how are you doing? Hey Solly, welcome to the stream. Doing good. Pegu, love your educational videos. Any chance you would also do Rust tutorials? I do not know Rust good enough to do any tutorials for it. If you've seen my video where I tried to build a Rust plugin, you know how I suffered during that. It would probably take me like a few months to learn Rust myself, and I don't really, I don't know, maybe I will have time at some point later on, but we'll see. So basically, I don't feel comfortable enough to try and teach someone using Rust when I'm not that good at it myself. Hey Hamza, welcome to the stream. Anyway, the last tiny bit we got here is this new, I don't remember if I've seen that site before, but there's now a website that's called ECMAScript Daily. And it basically follows all the ECMAScript related, ECMA committee, TC39 committee related things, such as proposal updates. So you can now get your ECMAScript proposal updates from a specific month in a nice condensed manner. So this here just contains two tables, one for new proposals and other for updated proposals, which in my opinion is awesome. They also have here Twitter feed, RSS feed, if you just want to subscribe to that, which is what I did, because I like to see those things. Where do they go for, and how does the proposal change? How do they progress, and so on and so forth. So if you're curious about tracking proposals, do check it out. There seems to be quite a few interesting things in here. As to the current proposal changes, none of that caught my interest. I mean, all of them look pretty nice, but there's nothing groundbreaking here. Basically, it looks just like a nice improvements and addition of the language. I guess branch. I mean, we already talked about that. Replace all is finally stage 4, which means it's going to be shipped soon and everything, if it's not already shipped and everything. But yeah, it's nothing super interesting. But I have another proposal for you later on that I want to talk about. So we're gonna see. Okay, let me have a look at the chat. Have you tried Node.js and of Google App Engine? I actually have not used Google App Engine at all and Google Cloud at all, to be honest. So I'm mostly have experience with Amazon Web Services and then the dedicated servers that you have to manage yourself, basically. So I have not tried Google Cloud's App Engine or, majority of other Google products, to be honest, at all, aside from their, end user facing like YouTube and Gmail and whatever. Okay, anyway, coming to the releases section, we got 5 of them here, starting with Prisma version 2.0, the database toolkit, as they call themselves, but mostly database ORM, I guess, with dynamically generated client that gives you auto completion support, which, I mean, it's a it's an interesting product. Let's just put it this way. So I did a stream on this week, and while it is really cool where you can basically just autocomplete things, some of the things it does feel really weird to me. Like the fact that it generates the schema from existing database, especially when you start from scratch, is just straight up weird. So you have to like create a Postgres database, then create your tables, and then the Prisma will generate the schema from that, which is like, I don't know if that makes sense to me. I would prefer to have the, everything the other way around, because I guess this is a nice approach when you already have a database and want to have a nice client for it. But when you start from scratch, it's just a pain in the ass to manually create tables. Why can't I just run like create my schema and then run a command and have Prisma generate tables for me? If they have that, and the tool itself is really big and there's a lot of pretty cool things it can do, including like database migrations and everything, they might have something like this, but their tutorial asks you to literally create the tables first and then run the schema generation from the tables, which is like, come on, there's got to be a tutorial if you can do that. Anyhow, it is a nice-ish tool that might be fitting for some cases. So if that sounds interesting, do check it out. Again, just consider it a fancy ORM for SQL databases. I think right now it supports MySQL, Postgres, and SQLite, but nonetheless, it's a pretty nice tool, and now it's version 2.0. Beware though, some of the viewers during the stream said they had a lot of problems using that in production with a lot of pains related specifically to migration tooling. There was to the version 1.0, so maybe 2.0 is better, but just a caveat here, keep that in mind when you evaluate that. Okay, next release we got here is Mocha version 8.0, which drops support for Node 8, finally adds the configuration file support and no longer supports the Mocha opts. And I think the biggest thing here is the ability to run tests in parallel. So if you're using Mocha, make sure to update. That seems like a pretty damn big release. NodeJS Heroku is also not something I've used. As I said, I typically bought the virtual private servers or dedicated servers such as DigitalOcean or Scaleway or Hetzner here in Germany, for example, because they're usually just cheaper. Like the platforms such as Heroku and Now and whatever, they're usually very nice, right? But they are 2-3 times more expensive than just managing a server. Like this is one of the reasons why I build Exaframe, right? Because I want this nice one command deployment, but I don't really want to pay like $20 for it for 2 static websites that I have. So yeah, not a fan of that. Anyway, continuing, we got Immerjs version 7.0 that brings the new feature called Current, which takes a snapshot of current state of a draft and finalizes it, but without freezing. Seems like it's mostly a debugging thing, so I haven't actually used Immerjs that much, but yeah, it's like seems like it's pretty nice feature if you want to debug stuff. Yes, but your servers are not scalable. I mean, in my case, I don't really need to scale anything, to be honest. Like I have my server that runs 6 or 7 projects, including BxJS.dev, and so far, like I would be surprised if I would need to scale a static website, and like a simple cheap box would not be enough for that. If I get to the point when I need to scale something, I don't know if I would go to Heroku. I would probably go to like Amazon Web Services or Azure or Google Cloud, and specifically tailor the scaling around the bottlenecks that I have, right? Because unless you hit those bottlenecks, you wouldn't know what you need to scale. So this is like starting with a server, I think, is the best option you have. For a little project, best way is a VP. I mean, again, that depends. It's a very general thing to say, and I think it's not that certain. So you cannot with certainty say that, okay, the best thing for a small project is just buy a virtual private server. No, that doesn't work like this. There's always questions like, what is the project? How will it work? Sometimes the best thing can be just buying a bunch of functions on Amazon Web Services, right? Pego, I've checked the Prisma migrate, but as far as I understood, like, first of all, it wasn't in the tutorial, so I assume it's only used for migrations. Second of all, like, if it can be used to generate the database from schema, then it's not mentioned anywhere in the docs, and it's just like, it doesn't make sense to me, basically. Anyhow, continuing, we got the next release, Visual Studio Code May 2020, version 1.46, which brings a whole ton of different improvements, including my favorite one, JavaScript CommonJS auto imports. So the require will now, when you basically add something and the VS Code knows that it is exported somewhere in your CommonJS modules, it will auto import it the same way it did with ES modules, which is freaking amazing. The other noteworthy feature, I think, is the pin tabs. I'm not sure I would personally use that, but seems nice, you know, if you need to pin something and have it in the editor. And as usual, there's like 200 more changes and differences. There's a official settings sync preview now if you are interested, which is pretty damn cool. Honestly, it looks like, you know, you can basically see configs from all the machines, figure out the difference in the data, and then specifically sync the data that you want, which is pretty damn cool, and or you even merge stuff. So it seems like a really nice sync solution, and I cannot wait for this to go live. I mean, the unofficial settings sync plugin is not that bad, but obviously the official solution would be a lot better. Right, and the last release we got here for today is Deno version 1.1.0 that is bringing Deno lint command and Deno eval -p as well, and as well as a bunch of other core features that are also nice, but, you know, not as highlight worthy, let's put it this way. So I guess the linter is the most, like the largest feature here, right? So you now have the integrated linter right in Deno itself. If you are curious to check it out, Deno still remains a pretty nice lightweight tool when you need to build something very small, very fast, based on JavaScript runtime that behaves kind of like a browser. But again, you know, I don't think I've actually used it instead of Node.js so far. Maybe there will be at some point when I just pick it up and use it. But yeah, there we go. All right, that is it for releases. Now we're coming to the libraries and demos. Again, not that many of those today. So starting with ses-shim. So this is a shim for secure ECMAScript, which in turn is a new proposal that basically aims to, well, okay, it's not exactly super new. So it was called Proposal Frozen Realms before, right? And then Proposal Realms. So there's been quite a lot of effort going around introducing the client, or I guess not the end user, that's wrong, developer-facing APIs that would essentially allow you to run untrusted code in a fine-grained sandboxed environment, right? So it seems extremely cool, but yeah, it's like this is already third or fourth proposal on my memory, but now we got the shim, which seems to be pretty nicely built, and you know, there seems to be a ton of work gone into that, and this is like fourth iteration. This is already stage 1, which is, I think, more than the previous proposals were. If I remember correctly, none of them actually advanced beyond stage 0, so I guess this is the sort of evolution into stage 1. And yeah, so now you got this secure ECMAScript shim that you can just go ahead and try out now. That looks actually really, really nice. So you can basically import the SES, then lock down the environment, and then try to do something and check if that stuff actually works, which seems like incredibly helpful utility. We're going to see where this proposal leads, but you know, if you have any interested in secure environments that allow you to run sandbox scripts, do check this out. It seems pretty damn cool. Okay. Next thing we got here is kin slider, HTML touch slider carousel with most native filling. So this is basically a slider that allows you to do things like this, right? There's also a bunch of examples here, and you know, most of the time those don't look really that impressive because doing this is not that hard in 2020. But doing this, wait, where is it? There we go. This looks and feels like an iOS date time picker, and it feels amazing, and it works really, really well. This is a really hard task, so if you are curious how that was done, or you needed to use a component like this in your app, then do check this one out. It's a really well made slider, and it's open source on GitHub, and you can just go ahead and try it. All right. Next thing we got here is a rich-markdown-editor, the open source React and Prose Mirror-based Markdown editor that powers Outline Wiki. Unfortunately, no public demo. You have to create an Outline account to actually try it out. But if you clone the repo, you can run the example there. It works pretty well. And the editor itself is pretty fancy. So like, if you look at the outline and the screenshots and the features they have, It does support quite a few things you can do with it, so pretty damn nice editor. All right. Continuing, we got fastify-peekaboo. I have no idea why the name is, but it's a plugin to memorize responses by using expressive settings. So essentially, it just allows you to define config, which will then memorize whatever the responses you send in a specific way, either in memory or currently it supports just the memory or file system. Yeah, I guess probably in the future they will add something like Redis or memcached because it makes sense to actually do caching in a more standardized manner, I guess. But seems like a nice plugin. Again, I have no idea why it's called fastify-peekaboo. It doesn't make any sense, but there you go. If you're working with Fastify, do check this out. Seems to be pretty damn nice. All right, continuing, we got Web Vitals Reporter, a tiny 800 bytes utility to simplify Web Vitals reporting. This is sort of a very small script that allows you to create an API reporter and then send the analytics to it with the Web Vitals. So if you are tracking your website in production and you wanted to track the Web Vitals but didn't want to build the tracking yourself, then do check this one out. It basically just sends post requests with nicely collected data. And yeah, this seems pretty nice and convenient. Okay, continuing, we got kretes, or kretes, I'm not sure how to read that correctly. It's a programming environment for TypeScript and Node.js built on top of VS Code. So it seems like it aims to be this sort of interactive thing that allows you to write code and see the results immediately and built on top of, or I guess as plugins to VS Code, or maybe it's a fork of VS Code. I'm not exactly. Yeah, it is a plugin for VS Code. And it looks interesting. Like, it's very raw because there's a lot of docs missing, but I like the idea. Like, I've always been a sucker for, the interactive and sort of the playground environments, specifically for JavaScript, because I do tend to use them quite heavily to try out the new modules or to experiment with some bits of code. And most of time I either use Quokka for that because that's usually enough, or if I need something very heavy, I go to like Code Sandbox or whatever and do it there, because it's just easier to fire up a browser than to start the whole like VS Code backend terminal, Node.js, whatever. But that seems like if it would basically take this pain away and would just do all of that for me, that might be pretty damn interesting. So if that sounds interesting, do check it out. There's, again, as I said, it's a very early version of the project, so there's like a bunch of docs missing. Some things are not exactly clear, but yeah, it's looks interesting. Okay, continuing, we got node-isbn, a simple Node.js module that uses Google Books API to find books by ISBN. If you are building a project that requires looking up books by using the ISBN, then, well, this looks pretty nice. Doesn't really require any config. Seems to work in a pretty basic way. Has the callbacks and promises API, so whatever the hell you might want to do that. So there we go. Okay, next thing we got here is HTTP2 Spy, test helpers for working with Node's HTTP2 module. Exactly as it says, if you need to basically test the HTTP2 module, or, I guess it's probably only useful for testing, right? So if you're working with HTTP2 module and need to test it, then do check this module out. Might help you out a bit. Right, next thing we got here is nodejsscan. So this is not exactly JavaScript utility, but it is utility for Node.js, and it's a static security code scanner that does exactly what the title says. So it allows you to statically scan your code for security vulnerabilities, known ones such as using MD5 hash, or like there's a ton of them here. This even provides you a nice summary and dashboard with possible stuff like XSS injections, SQL injections, header injections, and things like this. None of that is amazingly complex, but it's nice to have something like this. We could just throw your code in and check if you have any known vulnerabilities, basically. So if that sounds interesting, do check this one out. And the last thing we got here is njt npm jump to. It's a nice tiny command that basically allows you to jump to changelog, GitHub, homepage, issues, pull requests, or whatever. There's like a bunch of different endpoints for any package you want. So you can just say njt prettier H, and it will navigate you to the prettier homepage, and so on and so forth. I mean, I think you can do that with npm if you clone the repository. So basically npm can do that from the package.json, but this does it for any package, either from command line or from this website, which can be helpful if you are too lazy to look up the docs for a specific package, for example. That sounds like it might be a nice time saver. Right, that's it for libs and demos. Now we're coming to the interesting and silly things. We only have one interesting link here today. It's called nodesign.dev, and it's a collection of tools for developers who have little to no artistic talent, such as myself, that basically help you find nice art or nice fonts or nice CSS or nice colors or icons. Most of that stuff is under free licenses or permissive licenses with, like Creative Commons attribution or whatever. And there's quite a few of it. So if you are building things and you want to make it look a bit nicer and you are not really good with design, then do check this one out. It actually has quite a ton of things which you can just use for free or maybe with a tiny bit of attribution. So it seems like a pretty nice collection. Right, that's actually it from my side. So there was BxJS Weekly episode 118, very tiny one, just under half an hour, holy crap. If you guys have any news, questions, your projects to share, do throw them into the chat right now. If not, we can just wrap it up here. As usual, you can find all the links I've mentioned on GitHub or on bxjs.dev tomorrow after it updates overnight. You can join our Discord server to discuss any of that stuff or share your projects. And as I said, since I'm on a furlough, I will start daily live streams starting Monday. I'm going to be doing TypeScript and I'm going to be rewriting Exaframe into TypeScript as well as adding some features. If you want to see me suffer learning TypeScript, come around and check it out. It's probably going to be sometime like 3 p.m. Berlin time. So a bit later than this stream, but yeah, we're gonna see how that goes. And yeah, that's basically it. Tim, a tip for dev with no design skill. Wait a second. Okay, that's okay. First, any tips for writing resolvers, data loaders? That's a very, again, generic question, and it's really hard to answer without knowing specifics. My tip for writing anything is to think really hard about your use case and try to figure out what fits and what doesn't, what you will need and what you won't need, right? So you cannot write code in vacuum without knowing business and end user needs. So let's see, tip with no design skill. Canva desktop is related. What is Canva desktop? Let me have a look. I have not heard about that. Create what oh god, it requires me to log. I don't want to log in. What does it do? That looks like it seems like a bunch of is it just a bunch of templates? 8,000 yeah, okay, so it's just a collection of templates. I mean, that seems nice. Here's the question: is the no design dev includes it? Do they have search here? No, they don't. I assume, yeah, Canva? No, they don't. Okay, so maybe it's worth submitting a link. No, that's a DigitalOcean link. Where there, I saw a link to submit something somewhere. Back to top. You can submit tools here. There we go. So you can actually just submit a link over here, and maybe he will add it. So there we go. Have you done any low-code development? Would any be good if you want to extend the front end? By low-code development, do you mean like the whole like what you see is what you get area where you like drag and drop stuff? I used to do that back in Dreamweaver times. I don't know if any of you remember this tool, like Adobe. I think it was Adobe Dreamweaver, or no, I think it was. Wait a second. Originally, it was not Adobe, but Adobe. Yes, it was Macromedia, exactly. So it was Macromedia Dreamweaver. I think first time I've used it was in 1990 something. 1997. So it's probably came later to Russia, which was like 1999 or something. I tried it, and then I looked at the source code it generated, and it was fucking abysmal. And since that time, I haven't really tried any what you see is what you get editors. Like, I think, like, I'm lying. I tried some of them. I jumped in, looked at the results that they produced, and then never touched them again because it might be nice. Low code like Salesforce or Pega. I know Salesforce. I never used it. What is Pega? I have no idea what is Pega. It's probably something similar, right? Customer intelligence. Yeah, but those are not really low code. So this is sort of very specific use case, right? We have to get insights into data, and then you can just generate a bunch of, like, same goes for the Salesforce. It's a very specific use case for a very specific customer demographic that, you know, when you have this kind of data, and then you can generate like 10 different views from it, which is limited number of views. So I wouldn't call it low code. It's basically no code, right? Because you can just drag and drop and select things that exist that someone coded for you. Is not much different from using Excel or whatever. So I don't really, as a guy who just codes stuff 95% of time, I don't really use tools like this. Any tips for freelancing or remote jobs for people outside of USA or Europe? Try to find jobs in USA or Europe, even though you are out. Like, I mean, obviously there's going to be a problem with the time zones, which is so usually the biggest problem. But if you don't mind living on the USA or European time zone, you're going to get a lot more money if you find a remote or freelance job in the US or Europe. And don't sell yourself cheap, even though, you know, you're like from a country where the US salary might seem too much. Then still don't sell yourself too cheap, because why when you can ask for more? I use VS Code and Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver have the best edit in FTP in the IDE world. I don't honestly know how the modern Dreamweaver looks. As I said, last time I touched it was probably in the beginning of 2000s. I'm guessing they got a lot better than it was before, but I would just use Tailwind and VS Code to just manually do all of that. And I don't remember when it was the last time I used FTP for anything. Probably about 10 years ago. Let me think. So it's 2020 now. Yeah, 12, 11 years ago was the last time when I used FTP. Was back in the Russian university when we had to upload our tasks to the central server, which was like, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so it's been Docker and SSH from there on. I don't think it's been quite some time since I've actually done anything on the server directly. So it's mostly was like package stuff in the Docker, ship the Docker container, restart it, and you're done. But yeah. All right. Any more questions, suggestions, or things you want to share or ask? Or we can just wrap it up here and go have a nice rest of the weekend. And then on Monday, we can start rebuilding Exoframe. Where's my Exoframe? Rebuilding Exoframe into TypeScript, probably starting with the command line interface. There's a ton of things I want to try with it, not just TypeScript. It's like right now I'm using the yargs, for example, but I want to try the ink. Where was it? GitHub. Okay. No, what? No. God. Apparently I cannot type again. I wanted to try ink for the command line solutions, which was this one, right? React. So it basically allows you to use React to build command line tools, which looks amazing. And I know that like guys like Gatsby, Parcel, and Prisma use it. So I'm very curious to see how that would work out. Okay, doesn't seem like there's any more questions or suggestions. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show and found something interesting. Again, join me on Monday for Exoframe rewrite, and we're gonna see how that goes. Did you see Workerman, a PHP async framework that not need Nginx? I haven't touched PHP since 2013 or something, so if that's new, and I'm assuming that's new, then I have not seen it for sure. I'm guessing it's something that is relatively new. So yeah, it's like 400 stars 5 years ago. I mean, that's new enough for me not to see it. So like I haven't touched PHP world in ages. I know that it progressed tremendously since the last time I used it, but since I went to Node.js, I don't want to go back. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Appreciate all your questions, all your support as usual. If you want to continue discussion, join the Discord and just poke me there. Have an awesome rest of the weekend or rest of the week if you're watching the VOD of this. And I see you on Monday for some live coding.